Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Dementia Unplugged. I'm Jeannine Forrest, and will be facilitating today's episode called Wandering Reconsidered. Before we get started, I would like you to listen to a message from the president of the Dementia Society of America, Kevin Jamieson.
Welcome. Please listen to this important message from the Dementia Society of America. All content, including any potential medical information, is provided as an informational resource only and is not to be used or relied on for any diagnostic or treatment process. It should not be used as a substitute for professional diagnosis, care, and treatment. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any healthcare decisions or for guidance about a specific medical condition. The opinions expressed and the content shared by Dr. Forrest are not necessarily the opinions and content of the Dementia Society of America. Thank you.
Before we get started, in case you're new to the program, I'll be talking for about 30 minutes on the subject and then open it up to question and answer. And you can submit your questions to the chat button found on your screen. I also like to start out by giving just a very quick overview by what we mean by the word dementia, so that we're kind of on the same wavelength. Dementia is really an umbrella term, and dementia in and of itself is not a disease. So within this sort of overlaying umbrella, there are many, many different subtypes of reasons why people develop a dementia, which basically means that there are at least two or more cognitive functions that continue to decline over time, and it's progressive, so much to the point that it impacts daily life. Now, the most common types of dementias that you're probably more familiar with are things like Alzheimer's disease or a vascular dementia, Lewy body, frontal temporal, and the list goes on and on and on. So when we're talking about wandering in a moment or two, this is a behavior that can result from a variety of dementias, and we'll go into that in more detail. Okay, so what does it really mean to wander? I don't know about you, but I actually enjoy wandering, especially when I'm out on vacation or just enjoying sort of a leisurely day outside. I might be exploring, investigating, with no real, perhaps, purpose in mind, maybe to learn new things, or I might be on my way to find new friends, to socialize. The point I'm trying to make that wandering in general is a good thing. It relaxes me, at least. I would imagine many of you who are listening find wandering sort of to be part of your normal experience. So it's not surprising to find that 60 to 90% of people with dementia, quote, wander. 60 to 90% of people with dementia wander. So how do we really kind of delve into this wandering when the brain is changing? There are many definitions that have been sort of detailed of what it means to wander. Um, Here's one. It's the inability of older adults with dementia to find their way while pursuing a need or goal. So the inability to find your way, but the important part is that they're pursuing a need or goal. So it's not particularly aimless. However, the sort of negative consequences that are different than a person whose cognitive functioning is intact is that there's a higher risk for getting lost, a higher risk for endangerment, and a risk for what we call elopement. Elopement in the dementia arena means one leaves a safe area or place. Now, what are the risk factors for, quote, wandering for someone with dementia? Well, it really, at the minimum, someone has to have the ability to walk. We call it ambulate in healthcare. And combine that with memory loss. So if you can't retrace your steps, if one becomes lost in familiar and unfamiliar situations, um, where there may be visual, spatial cueing problems, that sets someone up for really getting lost, not purposely, and therefore some of the more negative sequelae of endangerment. We've learned that wandering can take place certainly can take place in early stage, but it's much more common in middle stages of dementia as one's cognitive functioning continues to decline. Some of the other sort of red flags that set someone up for potential, and this is more sort of wandering plus elopement, is becoming anxious in crowds, become overstimulated. Or there can be a real verbal, sort of intention to leave. I'm going to go find my husband. I'm going to go to work now. I'm leaving. I'm going to find my home. Or people can be lingering at doors, packing up their belongings, calling for a pickup. I'm, waiting for my taxi. Someone's sort of chronically bored. Or here's one that's often overlooked. If one sits too long in the same position and you get uncomfortable sitting, certainly anyone, even without dementia, would not want to be in the same prolonged position and want to get up and move and perhaps find a more comfortable place to be. Now, if that person living with dementia elopes, again, meaning leaves the safe area, we've learned that if they're found, they're typically found within 1.5 miles of their premise. So not too far, but far enough, because people can still walk rather quickly. The scary part of all this is that just about 50% are found, but that also means 50% are not. But if they are found, or I should say, if they're not found within 24 hours, it can result in serious injury or death. So that's why there's so much concern about wandering and elopement when it comes to caring for people with dementia. There can certainly be a very scary negative side to this normal behavior called wandering. But I want to explore this a little bit more and how we really frame wandering, and to really look at it in a variety of perspectives. So, from a healthcare provider or family member who's very, very concerned, uh, rightly so, about the dangers of, we can see it as sort of a disruptive problem, an at-risk behavior, something that, quote, needs to be controlled. And therefore, that's what has really created the impetus for, quote, locked units, memory care units. Um, Historically, unfortunately, people have used restraints, both physical and chemical restraints, to keep people in their place, to keep them from eloping, to keep them from wandering. And so there's this negative connotation to a real normal activity. And on top of it, people who do, quote, wander are stigmatized as a wanderer. They're labeled as exit seeking. I'd like to reconsider that, knowing, or at least remembering, that wandering in most of our adult lives is a positive thing. So, how do we sort of create that balance then, but maintaining safety? There's a study done by two nurse researchers out of the journal Research in Gerontological Nursing. Did wandering behavior from the perspectives of older adults with mild to moderate dementia in long-term care. And I found this a fascinating study because it really tried to look from the inside out perspective, from the person with dementia, on why they were, quote, you know, going for that walk. What was behind that activity or that behavior? So I'm asking you to reconsider and put on the lens of someone with dementia and hear their stories. So, from the person living with dementia, when the researchers captured sort of the common themes, this is what was learned. People just considered it sort of their normal everyday activity. I'm going out for a walk. I'm looking to have some fresh air. This is the way I keep in shape. Or I'm on my way to work. It's time for me to pick up my children from school. It's time for me to go home. And certainly this is not my home. This is part of my daily routine. I'm going out to meet some friends. Or I'm going to go walk the dog or go look for some birds. So what I hope you're hearing is that from the perspective of the person with dementia, certainly exploring, searching, finding the way to get out was not considered manipulative or trying to give someone a hard time. None of those things. In fact, it was all positive because this is the way they had lived their lives for so many years. And unfortunately, because many of the reasons that people develop dementia hinder sort of that awareness and insight, you can see why you have two sides of the coin playing at the same time. So when we're reconsidering this whole concept of wandering, I'd like you to think about how, as care providers, care partners, caregivers, professional and family, really try to balance this whole concept of safety and maintaining autonomy and dignity, at the same time promoting health and addressing their unmet need. That's a lot. That's really a lot to consider. But I think it's really important as we're reconsidering this whole concept of wandering. It's not all bad all the time. And how do we look at it from all these different angles? So instead of saying someone is a wanderer with such sort of I've heard it with such disgust and a sense that that person is just, wow, they're just wanderers, and sort of labeling. They're not seeing the person first, which is all part of what we call person-centered care. So instead of saying someone's wandering, perhaps we reframe that and saying, well, that person, my mom, is exploring or going for a walk or looking for something or someone, or they're looking to go home, exercising, they're finding their way, investigating, socializing. Notice I'm not using the word wander. And there's some positive benefits to, quote, wandering. It promotes circulation, more movement, less risk for depression. It actually decreases falls by keeping, your legs stronger, more agile, helps to decrease pain and stiffness. So how do we support this movement at the same time supporting safety? Excuse me. So the person with dementia can wear or carry display a medical ID. And you'll notice some of these are sort of proactive, not always reactive. It's a combination. It's important to set up a daily routine that people have a sense of purpose. Exercise, movement should be part of it. Engage someone in a meaningful activity. It could be planting flowers or helping to prepare a meal. Making sure that we know if the person's hungry or needs to use the toilet. So therefore, that's why we have what we call wayfinding signs. It's not only the words on the screen I'm showing you, for example, the word toilet, but then a picture of one. So when reading becomes more difficult, the picture and the location of that is more easily identified. So if someone's, quote, looking for the toilet and we have these wayfinding signs, there's less chance that they can be, quote, become lost. If people are trying to leave a door, an exit door, I've worked with organizations to put do not enter signs on top of that, or people living in their own private homes, do not enter signs. How else can we support this movement and safety? In terms of locks, it makes more sense to put deadbolts in hard to reach places. So that's way at the top or way at the bottom, places that are rather unexpected and unfamiliar. Or put a doorknob cover on. Now, this should never, I guess I should just make sure everyone knows, you don't lock people in their home unsupervised. This is always with some form of supervision or a care provider present. In addition, I would encourage you to add a bell or a chime or an alarm door that alerts people if someone is trying to open the door. You can also use a safety latch, especially if there are windows that one could potentially crawl through. Make sure that outside gates are secured. Hide car keys. Secure a bicycle. I worked with a family once that they did a great job in securing the car keys, but this person with early young onset dementia used to be an avid bike rider and found his bike and went exploring, went on a ride, but went on a ride for hours and hours and hours. So it's those kinds of things that we don't always think about. And my last line here just underscores, please do not leave that person alone if you're concerned at all about elopement and endangerment. Don't leave them alone at home or in a car unsupervised. The main idea here is that we want to anticipate the fact that a person may, quote, wander. 60 to 90% of people with dementia do. And I've seen too many families say, oh, that'll never happen to my mom. That'll, never happen to my dad or loved one. It's always better to plan in advance and anticipate this, prevent and reduce the risk. So have a recent picture available in your phone or in a frame. So if we need to notify local authorities, it's not a picture of 20 years ago. We need to know what they look like now, immediately. Create a list in advance of local friends, families to call so they can sort of start a search party. Have a list with addresses of favorite places this person has often frequented. Can also sew ID labels into clothes with names and phone numbers and addresses. As we become more sort of electronic, there are electronic tracking devices that have been developed. There are even GPS sensors one could put in shoes. Now, the problem is it would have to be in all of their shoes or transferred from day to day to whatever shoe one was wearing. But I do want to let you know that the Dementia Society of America is promoting a new electronic tracking program called Operation Keep Safe ID. Just starting to roll that out. And it's a combination of ID cards, a watch strap, stickers, sort of an online profile. It would be a national program. And so more to come on that. And that's called Operation Keep Safe. And you can go to the website and find more about this. This obviously is more of a reactive way of preventing endangerment and elopement, but certainly a very important one. It's part of a package of ways to continue to promote movement, but in such a way that keeps people safe. Now, if your loved one or that person does elope and they're not found within 15 minutes or less, I'm strongly recommending, and other programs strongly recommend, calling 911. There's a silver alert system that's nationwide, just like Amber Alert for children who've been kidnapped. Don't wait. It's always better to activate these systems sooner than later. Just because we talked about that there's a 50% chance that someone could fall, get hit by a car, just the possibilities unfortunately are scary and endless, and maintaining safety is so very important. So when we talk about wandering reconsidered, I hope I'm leaving you with some additional insights and thoughts here. Um, we do want to support movement. Historically, I've seen, unfortunately, sad things where people have just been sort of strapped to their chairs. Uh, this is, with alarms and all sorts of ways, because there's such an extreme concern about people moving to the detriment of, of causing pain and anxiety and agitation. And so we need to do better on promoting movement and keeping legs strong and nimble and decreasing sort of agitation and depression. And all those things can happen if we just want to keep people in a bubble in one safe position all the time. Um, there's no dignity to that. On the other hand, um, we want to maintain that safety. So let's start by changing that word wandering to someone who has an unmet need. And you fill in that blank. And this is where you're tailoring and finding out what that need is. So for some people, they do need to explore, they do need to walk, and that's okay. But let's not just label someone in a derogatory fashion as a wanderer. So with this last slide, I want to encourage all the listeners to empower and support our human need for movement, connection, and safety, but at the same time, with specific, tailored, sort of multiple, dignified measures in place. So we really are on a path to learning how to care for people with dementia before we can find the cures. And I say that purposely because there are so many different reasons for our dementias, and it won't be just one magic pill, one magic vaccine. Um, it'll be a variety, and it'll take some time. And in the meantime, we have to live, we have to love, we have to care for our brothers and sisters with all the different forms of dementias. And so therefore, it's the learning to care that's so important. I do want to share with you that if any of the listeners would like my individual consultation, sort of one-on-one, I have a private practice called Through the Forest, and I offer a service called Dementia Coach on Call. And it's a sort of one-to-one facilitation, and we can learn more about your individual concerns. So you can find me on dementiacoachoncall.com or call 773-704-1834, and I'd be happy to help guide you. I especially want to thank the Dementia Society of America for support of this program, and highly encourage any of you to go to the website and look at the absolutely wonderful resources that are available. It's an all volunteer organization that addresses and helps support people with all different types of dementias. And if able, I would also encourage you to donate to continue this really wonderful work. Okay, so with the next slide, I'm going to turn off the recording so that you can send in your questions through the chat button, and it'll just keep it a little bit more private. So thank you again for all of you who have listened, and thank you for those of you who continue through the Q&A section.